All right. Hey, everyone, welcome. Thank you for that introduction. I certainly appreciate it. As mentioned, we will be talking about artifacts and remote access tools. And why is this a topic? Well, from my time in the Army with the Department of Defense, it was certainly a concern. And certainly within my time in Mandiant, we're seeing a lot of this being used as well. So it was only right, it's only fitting. So a little bit about myself. On top of what he mentioned, I'm at Mandiant, yes, retired from the US Army. About half of my career there was in cybersecurity, forensics, incident response. I'm also an adjunct cybersecurity professor where I teach Python at a University of Arizona. I'm a PowerSheller, also at heart. I believe in education. So there's two training platforms that I manage, all about giving somebody an opportunity to learn the language and hone their skills. So let's get into this a little bit more. So remote access use. Well, why is this even a thing? Well, from a legitimacy perspective, it certainly improves productivity, right? Allowing me, for example, to be able to not have to sit at my desk or cubicle 24/7, but being able to access my workstation, system files, what have you from afar. So that's good, that's a plus. The other thing is it drives collaboration. Now, in this day and age, we don't necessarily think of remote access tools as a collaboration driver. We probably would think of things like Teams and things of that nature. However, that functionality is certainly built in and was part of the overall purpose of it. So that's still a thing. And then number three, I think three is probably the biggest thing that we see within organizations in which it is being used, because IT professionals generally aren't going to walk to your desk to be able to access your machine to assist. It allows them to sit right where they are to be able to do those things. So while this isn't an all-inclusive list of really the benefits and why remote access tools are being used, it certainly highlights three things that are really kind of key for the use of the tools. Now, on top of that, we also have, well, why do threat actors use it? And I would tell you threat actors are certainly using it. Anything from APTs to UNC groups, certainly financially and otherwise motivated. Well, largely they use it because of a number of things, and I won't say these in any particular order per se, but the ease of use, right? So being able to drop that file on there, install it in most cases in a silent perspective, and then being able to be off to the races with it. Little to no configuration needed. You really can't beat that. The next part of it is generally organizations aren't even monitoring for these tools, be it the tool that they're actually using in their organization or just use for other remote access tools in the environment at large. So because it's largely going unmonitored, or there's certainly inconsistencies associated with it, it makes it certainly attractive for threat actors to be able to use it. And the last thing I'll mention certainly is if it is a tool or capability that you're already using in your organization, then they have the opportunity to kind of blend in with that traffic. If we're using a remote access tool in our environment right now, we're largely, if we are even monitoring it, we're largely going to acknowledge that traffic, that activity as something that's standard in our environment. You see it and you're like, oh yeah, we use that, so it's good, right? So you already discount it. That allows the threat actor to certainly blend in with that aspect, and they certainly take advantage of that. So again, not an all-inclusive list, but certainly highlighting a couple of things in which remote access tools become attractive to threat actors. So it's no secret that at Mandiant, we produce an annual report called M-Trends. If you haven't read it, certainly recommend you do that. There's a number of organizations that also produce some form of an annual report, certainly worth the read. Based upon what that organization is seeing or has saw within the last year. So looking at the M-Trends report, the most frequently seen techniques, the top 10, we see that number 8 is remote services. Remote services encompasses remote access tools. So of the top 10 techniques that we saw, roughly 27% of them contain remote access services, again, with remote access tools being bucketed in there. Now, just to not really present such a subjective view, if you will, again, working for Mandiant and dealing with this on a daily basis, I'll at least provide one more. So from a CISA perspective, when asked upon request, they do risk and vulnerability assessments for organizations. They modeled those assessments based upon the MITRE framework. Everybody's familiar with the MITRE attack. And given that, when we still are looking at remote access tools, well, we see it in a number of categories, right? We see where remote access tools are being encompassed as part of initial access, right? We're seeing it where it's being encompassed from the perspective of persistence, okay? We're also seeing it from the perspective of lateral movement, right? Thinking about lateral movement from saying PC1 talked directly to PC2, talked directly to PC3, not necessarily in that case. Now they're all going back out to broker relay servers and then moving in that perspective. Again, an opportunity and ability, if you will, for them to blend in a little bit more. And then kind of last, but certainly not least, they're using it for command and control. And as we talk about particularly one of these remote access tools, and we look at the UI, you may be looking at it like, man, this is a good rat, right? Like, why go out there and spend money on dev time and a number of other things when you can just kind of utilize that? So again, looking at it from a different perspective as well. So we are focused, or will be focused specifically on Windows. Well, why is that the case? Again, another excerpt from the M-Trends report. When we look at the effectiveness of malware from the year 2021, Windows overwhelmingly, right? That's what we see, that's the market share. The interesting thing about remote access tools though, is a lot of them, most of them are cross-platform, right? So just because we're focusing on Windows today, doesn't mean these same tools are not just as effective on other platforms, but I really wanted to hone in on one aspect. Okay, so while there's a plethora of these remote access tools, we'll just kind of talk at a high level, really the communication flow, if you will. So we have a workstation, we'll say workstation 1 near the top, we got workstation 2 near the bottom. Each has their own IP address. With the application installed, we'll talk from the perspective of it being installed. Well, they are going to communicate independently with a broker, a relay server, right? And I'll use that terminology loosely because depending on which type of tool we're talking about, they may refer to it as something different. And as they check in with that server, well, they're each going to get their own ID, a unique identifier associated with that application and that server. By utilizing that ID, well, they can then connect to each other. They are connecting largely through the relay server, through the broker, who is essentially going to bridge that connection. So in this case, workstation 1 is beginning its initiation to connect to workstation 2. And as that connection is created, brokered, of course, through the broker or the relay server, if you will, authentication to that machine is largely going to be done in one of two ways. Option A, well, there could be an unattended access configured. What's this unattended access? Well, they could already have the username and password configured on the distant machine, allowing them to be able to access that machine at will without any authorization or any input from the remote machine itself, right? You can almost think about it as having that pre-established authorization. Option 2, well, they could essentially still connect to the machine, but then on the distant machine, it's going to prompt the user that's already logged in to accept the connection. Hey, PC1 is trying to log in, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to allow it or not allow it, right? That's really the options that we have. As you could imagine, threat actors don't like to use that second option, right? That's not really productive in their line of work, right? No person's going to be at their desk, get a random request and be like, oh yeah, let me let them log in real quick. Oh, you want my mouse? Sure thing. Actually, I got to go get something to drink, so I'll be back anyway. So looking at these tools, right? Like there's dozens, maybe hundreds, low hundreds of these tools, right? So, I mean, some of them, as I bring them to the screen, are some that we've seen or I've seen in my past experience, right? Not to say one is much more prevalent than the next, but certainly a threat actor doesn't care, right? We're talking windows of opportunity to be able to meet their overall intent, right? Small list of a much larger list that is certainly available. We don't have time to talk about all of the ones listed here. So we're just gonna bucket it down to a smaller group, right? And that smaller group is gonna be AnyDesk and ConnectWise. ConnectWise used to be called Screen Connect, right? But nonetheless, cool. Let's talk about both of those. We'll start off with AnyDesk. So AnyDesk has three modes in which it could be essentially used, if you will. Mode one, it could be installed. Once you install it, there's a service associated with it. That service runs the system. Okay, cool. So then there's some form of persistence because that service is going to automatically start. Option two, you could use it in a portable mode, right? Meaning it's not installed. You're just running that application as needed. When you do that, it's going to look in the current directory that that executable is in for gcapi.dll. And if it's not there, it's going to look in the temp directory. If it's not there, then it's going to look to download it. That becomes an artifact in which we could typically look for, right? The other mode is going to that we have available is portable with elevation. But what's the difference between regular portable with elevation? Well, with portable, if we were trying to do anything that required elevating our rights, required higher rights, and the UAC prompt came up, we wouldn't be able to see that if we're utilizing AnyDesk in the regular portable mode. If we want to be able to elevate said rights by way of being able to type in the UAC prompt as it came up, then we're going to need to utilize the other option. Now, I've seen a mixture in which threat actors have utilized AnyDesk. In some cases, they don't care, right? They have no respect, if you will, and they'll just install it right on your box, right? In other cases, they'll download it, go straight to downloads, they'll execute it right from there. And again, they still have no respect. They don't even clean up after themselves. So it's kind of a mixture of it. Now, when we look at the logs that are available, we won't hit every artifact. I want to talk about some high vis ones, some things to really give you something that you can walk away with and look for in your environment. The logs, when we're talking about AnyDesk being installed on your system, well, it's going to be in the AnyDesk folder within, the program data directory. Okay, and we'll talk about some of the logs that are in there. You see a snippet of it in the top right-hand corner. We also have logs that when it's installed or in portable mode, they are installed in the app data directory of that user, but then there's also the pictures directory and videos directory in that user's profile. And we see a snippet of one of those in the bottom right-hand corner. Talk a little bit more about some of those here in a minute. One thing to highlight, because if we're doing incident response and we're getting logs from a number of places, we need to figure out what log time or what time source we're dealing with, or else that timeline is going to be all kind of jacked up. So the good thing here, AnyDesk logs are going to be in UTC for us. So that's super helpful. Okay, so one of those logs within those directories is called connection_trace.txt. And this is simply logging connections to the machine, right? So we see a number of essentially separated columns, if you will, and reading it is maybe not as straightforward just off initial look, or maybe it is, but certainly with a little bit of explanation, it becomes a lot clearer. One thing I noticed, certainly with AnyDesk, is they don't give field names for their logs. They want you to send the logs to them because the logs are not made for you to be able to do forensics on them. They're really used for diagnostics should anything happen and you call upon them, right? So we're essentially getting the user. That's good. Now, the user could be useful, could not be useful. We get the connection ID. That's certainly useful. Not being law enforcement, if we need to get more in-depth information, we can certainly pass that off to law enforcement and allow law enforcement to connect or contact AnyDesk and then be able to get a little bit more information in that aspect. The real thing that I want to highlight here is that third field where we see past WD, user, and a number of other things kind of going down. Well, that's going to highlight how the user connected to this machine. This is on the remote machine, the machine that is being connected to. And if it's user, well, that is somebody connected to them and they were prompted to allow them in and they accepted it. Okay, if it's rejected, same thing, but instead of them allowing that connection, they rejected that connection. Okay, and then when we look at past WD, this is where the unattend file is being used. So they've set it up to where they can access the machine without any user on a distant end allowing that connection, but they're forced or prompt to put in the password, right? They know the password or should know the password. They're prompt to put it in each time. And then token is the same thing, but the password is saved. So now when they want to connect to that machine, they can simply double click the tile associated with it, and it automatically logs them in. All right, so that allows us to see how that connection is actually made. Two more log files associated with any desks. Well, we have two trace files. One is ad.trace, the other ad_svc.trace. ad.trace speaks to web UI artifacts or really actions that are taking place, which is why we see things like error and connection events being logged there. This is a file that's going to be resident no matter if it's installed or in a portable mode. If it's running as an installed mode, this file will only contain those things I just mentioned. If it's running in portable mode, it will contain those things, but it would also contain a little bit more verbose data to the perspective of the next aspect. So ad_svc, things that are in there, that's only going to be resident when we're running in installed mode. And this is going to really capture more verbose data than what we saw above, but more specifically, we get network focused data. So this is where we see things like source IP addresses, PIDs, if files were transferred, what relays were being used. This is going to be more of the bread and butter. But again, that file only exists when we're running in installed mode. If I'm running in portable mode, then that SVC file doesn't exist, but the contents rather that would normally be there would then be in the other one, ad.trace. So this is going to be our bread and butter. Looking at what that file looks like, well, it's just stuff in a file, right? You got to kind of make sense of it. Sometimes it's not as easily understood. AnyDesk doesn't produce a whole lot of documentation out there in regard to that. Why? Because this file is not for you. This file is for them when they are contacted to be able to assist with diagnostics and understand what's going on. So in this case, in this example, I have the file from a local machine. I have the file on the bottom from a remote machine. The local machine, its ID begins with 430. AnyDesk IDs are nine digits, by the way. So I just blacked out the last 6 digits. The remote machine, it begins with 669. So when we look at that local machine, and now what I have circled, we see that there's an entry where it's connecting to 669. That would be, again, that bottom machine. And then several lines below that, we see the source IP address of the local machine. So where it says logged in from, that is from the perspective of it connecting to the relay server. So if I were to look at this log, I'm like, okay, it connected to an AnyDesk ID 669, such and such at this time. At the following time, I'm able to see what IP address that system had at the time. IP address that it had at the time is less of use for me in most cases. What's really going to be beneficial is the bottom log, the system that is being remoted into or connected to. So we're able to see the AnyDesk ID that connected to the machine, again, outside of the other log that we have. And then we're able to see the raw IP address of that connecting machine. Because if we were to look at a net stat, what we're going to see is connections to AnyDesk relay servers. We're not going to see the raw IP address that's connecting. So this is where we start to be able to trace that back. Now, looking at this log file, that could be several pages worth of data. I don't want to be scrolling up and down trying to, okay, that line is not important, that line's not important, right? So I'll talk about a few functions that I created to kind of make this easier for you, because anybody doing IR, we know that this is a results-driven field and we can't be looking at a data set forever, right? So we want to be able to get speed, we want to be able to get accuracy with it all at the same time. Something else that's useful here is AnyDesk has the ability to be able to take screenshots or pictures of the distant machine. So simply, there's a GUI menu option for it. And then when those pictures are being taken, they are stored locally. So a use case here is threat actor is connected to your box. You don't know they're connected. They're seeing you do whatever it is that you're doing. That's of interest. They take a screenshot that is saved locally to their system. Okay, cool. Now, they also have the ability to take video associated with it as well. Maybe you're browsing the internet, you may go to your banking site or whatever the case, they can take that video unbeknownst to you. That also is saved locally to the machine, not on the machine in which they are connected to. The other thing here is every machine that you have been connected to, it will store the thumbnails of the desktop background. So when I look at those pictures in the bottom right-hand corner, they're in pairs, right? So we have a .png, we have a .ico. The first set and the third set, those look like standard Windows backgrounds. That middle set, that looks a little bit more customized. That's actually my lab machine, right? So you start to look at backgrounds, you might be able to start to discern a little something. So that's super useful for us, or could be helpful for us in the context of our investigation. Another thing about AnyDesk that I guess is a feature, right? I guess is a feature, right? I thought Microsoft was the only one making features. However, there's an ability to do tunneling through AnyDesk, right? Like port forwarding. So for this to work, you have to have an established AnyDesk connection. And once you have that AnyDesk connection, that remote machine can then forward traffic on your behalf. So a use case here would be, I have workstation 1, workstation 2, both of them have AnyDesk. Workstation 1 connects to workstation 2, but guess what? Even outside of that connection, workstation 1 can't get to workstation 3. Workstation 2 does have a path to workstation 3. So through tunneling, we can connect to workstation 2, and through workstation 2, we can access workstation 3. Setting this up is quite simple. There's a menu option. The menu is shown in the top right-hand corner. We can do forward tunnels. We can do reverse tunnels as well. So just using a forward tunnel, what I was just talking about, you can see we put in the local port, i.e. the local port on our machine that we want to connect to. And when we connect to it, what is the remote IP address and remote port that we want to connect to as well? So again, this is a feature, if you want to call it that, but certainly threat actors are utilizing this as well, because again, as we, through years of investigation, all of us here looking at tunneling of different sorts, we recognize that the source is truly obfuscated, and we start to see or start to think that that traffic originated from the machine that traffic is coming from or is being remoted through. So enough about AnyDesk. Let's talk about ConnectWise, what I like to call a full-featured C2 platform, right? So ConnectWise, formerly known as Screen Connect, I only say that because, one, just so you know, but two, some of the directory structures still reference Screen Connect, so I just didn't want to cause any confusion there. But it can be installed in one of two modes, either on-prem or in the cloud. Doing on-prem is a lot more difficult today than what it used to be, because they're trying to force everybody, as you can imagine, encourage everybody to move to the cloud, right? The good thing about the cloud from a malicious perspective is that it takes little to no setup to get going. Now, this is a paid for service, but they'll allow you to have 14 days for free and you don't even need a credit card. If I'm not me per se, but let's say it was me, getting ready to do a ransomware campaign, 14 days is more than enough, right? For me to be able to get in there, move around like I need to, and then drop that next payload. So we see threat actors really take advantage of this route where they can stand up a tenant, leverage it, and then go about their merry business. The logs associated with this platform are largely written to the Windows event log, right? So we see the perspective of a little bit or mostly the application log, which I'll talk about here shortly. Looking at the structure though of other artifacts that could be on the system, we have the temp directory has a Screen Connect folder, and then there's a subdirectory with the version of Screen Connect. So that's interesting, and that's really kind of helpful in some respect, because when an actor stands up that ConnectWise tenant, they then compile or make their agent, and it's going to be customized to their own individual tenant. The other thing we have is we have in the program data directory within Screen Connect, there's an actual user config or user cough rather file. And it's not, in my opinion, very helpful other than it will note the last directory used for file transfer. So at the time of this capturing, if you will, we were using C users Nando documents plugin. If I were to retrieve another file or send another file, then that path will be replaced with the latest one. So it's only going to give you the latest, right? So we could argue how useful that's going to be. We'll talk about some more methods to be able to get some more historical aspect. We also have this app config. By default, most, if not all, of these remote access platforms, they're not made to secretly get on a distant machine, right? You look at something like TeamViewer, you got the little black window or little box that comes off from the side, the background changes. A lot of these have some type of thing on the screen to show that somebody else is connected in the machine. Well, with the app config, we can go in there and actually configure our ConnectWise connection to not show those things. Hey, there's a banner that's normally up top. Yeah, I don't want that. Turn that off. Hey, there's something that shows in the system tray. Yeah, no, I don't want that either. Turn that off. So you ultimately can get to a point, and this is what threat actors love to do, get to a point where it doesn't look like anybody's in there, and your method to be able to tell is to essentially look at a netstat to see that established connection, right? Again, looking at the app config, we could see all those configurations in which are customized to show that those things are not in place. So I mentioned that ConnectWise largely uses the event logs to be able to capture this data. One of the biggest things that are going to come out is when this gets installed, of course, 7045 log gets written, and that's going to be the same thing with any desk and anything else, rather. There's some juiciness in that 7045 log, which I have down at the bottom. Specifically, we'll have the instance ID associated with the tenant. So if and when you get to a point where you're trying to contact ConnectWise on your own, or you're leveraging law enforcement to be able to do that, or some other threat intel platform to be able to understand any other campaigns going on that's leveraging that same instance ID, well, that's where we're going to get that from. The other thing, when we look at the logs, in the application log, ConnectWise events are written as EID 0, EID 0. So when there's a remote connection that started, well, in the top right-hand corner, we're seeing what that log looks like. It'll list the name of the user and tell you there was a connection. That is it. So it's not really as descriptive as one may want it. We at least get a timestamp, we get a user, and we see the event is connected. The same thing when the session is terminated. We'll see the user, we'll get a timestamp, and we see the actual action. Now, when it comes to transferring a file to the remote machine, that gets logged in the event log as well. In this case, we see we transferred beacon.exe. Doesn't tell me where on disk it transferred it to. It just says it got transferred. Now, what we don't get is when we take files from the remote machine and bring it locally. That isn't logged, unfortunately, but we can see when files are uploaded to the remote machine. Command execution, that's really the thing that we really want to get into. And there's a little bit of artifacts, but this is where it gets a little bit more difficult for us. So looking at this, well, command execution, because this is going to be a service, it's installed as service, as system, excuse me. Well, anything that we execute is going to be implicated or ran as system on the distant machine. All right, so from a threat actor perspective, that's great. From a incident responder, well, it's like, all right, well, not necessarily a good thing. But when these actions get executed, they don't actually just execute in the perspective of an interactive session, right? That we can think of when we're in Python, PowerShell, or any other platform. They actually write scripts to the temp directory, execute them, and then delete them, right? So if we have the appropriate login in place, we could position ourselves to be able to see what those commands are. Now, doing incident response, we kind of just go into it thinking that we're not going to have those artifacts. So we have to think about what else can we have, right? So let's look at this a little bit more. What is logged is the length of the command, And this is what that log looks like. We see in this case, the length of the command executed was 657. And within ConnectWise, there's a number of built-in tasks that literally, if you click on them, in the background, it will execute on the remote machine on your behalf. And those commands are static in nature. They don't change. So through a little bit of research, when it retrieves a process list, well, that is 657 characters. When it tries to get a software listing, that's 861. And we see them kind of go on and on. So we can use this not as something that's like concrete. However, the chances of seeing a command that is 657 characters that isn't a process listing, probably a little bit more far and few, so we can kind of err on the side of caution in that perspective. And then when we execute manual commands, like I just want to make my own and execute it, the same thing where it lists the number of characters. So one thing I'll highlight here too is those built-in tasks, the services, the services, processes, updates, things of that nature. Those are executed from the perspective of PowerShell scripts. So a .ps1 gets written, it gets executed, and then they delete it, or it gets deleted. Anything that's manual in nature is going to be a command script. So a .cmd gets written with whatever command we want to execute, and then it gets deleted afterwards. I say that because now we're going to show some of this web UI that an attacker is leveraging and what makes this attractive to them. So on the left side, we see whatever workstations are checking into our tenant. On the right side, we see essentially commands that we can run at the ready. And just clicking on that icon, that brings up my process list on the right-hand side. So right off the bat, an attacker is able to get a process list, and we know that that's one of the things that people want to do once they get access. They want to understand what's running, what they might have to bypass. They want to understand really some of the makeup of the machine. And they can get this at any time, all right? So it automatically refreshes. However, they can also, near the top of that right-hand side window, they can also click the refresh button. We could also do the same thing with services ports or services updates and event logs. Now, there's also like random information that it retrieves, almost like a sysinfo. So we see that they're getting the user that's logged in. We also have the ability to get screenshots on a regular interval. This is all just happening, or the threat actor can make it run at that time. When it comes to executing PowerShell commands that I mentioned that are actually executed as command scripts, well, we have a window where we can type in whatever it is that we want. In green, you can see the PowerShell commands that I typed in. I needed to call upon that PowerShell binary and then my actual PowerShell command. And then from there, I get the results back. Now, in this case, I did a who am I, that's 6 characters, so that's what I see in the event log. The other thing we notice threat actors doing is once their ConnectWise agent gets installed and then calls back to the tenant for the first time, they'll automatically have commands set up to run upon initial check-in. In this case, it's a netstat. In other cases, it's been making other changes on a workstation. So these things are called triggers, and it utilizes an if-then kind of syntax, if you will. If this happens, then do this. So there's 3 options. They can have it send an email. Threat actors ain't doing that. Perform a web request. I haven't witnessed that. Or session event. Session event is where they can have a specific action happen on the target in terms of an actual script being run. In this case, we see them just doing a netstat from a PowerShell perspective. There's also this thing called Backstage mode. When we think of ConnectWise, we think of a true interactive GUI-like session. Well, they can also use Backstage, and what that does is still connect to the target machine, but it provides back a command shell and a PowerShell prompt, all running a system, right? So now we're really not even messing with the person who's actually logged in. The good thing about this is it is logged. The bad thing is it doesn't differentiate between the type of connection that is made. Like, did you make a GUI-like connection or did you make a terminal-like connection? That isn't differentiated within the log, unfortunately. So when we're looking at the artifacts that are available, the application itself has a substantial amount of logs. We just have to know what's available and where they're at. Certainly, our event logs could be certainly useful for us if configured appropriately. I can't say enough. 4688 is substantial, specifically with command line arguments being enabled. And then we start to understand the behavior, specifically with ConnectWise. I mentioned that it runs those PS1 and .cmd files. Well, if we start to see either one of those being labeled as part of a command line argument and then linked to Screen Connect, well, we can certainly insinuate certain things are going on. And then with the appropriate logging, while those scripts are being deleted, we'll be able to get the contents in the log for us. And we certainly want to ship it off somewhere. We don't want to just leave it locally, as we all know. So while I mentioned some of those things that are useful, other standard artifacts are still in play, right? So as these things are being written, we still have those other artifacts that are useful for us. So being able to assist with this, well, I've written a subset of PowerShell scripts to the tune of roughly 30 that parse these logs and make things user-friendly for you, the analyst, or me, the analyst, so we can get after the answers that we're desiring. In this case, we have that log again, just really vomit on the screen. When we utilize one of those functions that I mentioned, well, we put it together in a table-like format in CSV, JSON, whatever you want. But in this case, we're just CSV. And now we can answer very specific questions. What are those specific questions? Well, here's a list, but not all inclusive. Things that I want to know when I'm leading an investigation, my boss wants to know, and most certainly the organization that I'm supporting would want to know. What type of outgoing connections were there? What IPs were they communicating with? What was the keyboard associated with that connection? Specifically, if you're working in one region and you only use one language per se, you wouldn't expect any other one. Duration associated with them. Was there any tunneling going on? Were there any files retrieved? Did they utilize the utility option to be able to retrieve those files? Or did they try to use like a copy paste to bypass that straight up utility? Recommendations? Well, we want to regularly audit these tools, enable MFA and a number of other things, right? To be able to get that visibility. And really some of my future work really going into this topic, well, I want to be able to carve artifacts out of memory. I want to transform these PowerShell capabilities into Sigma rules, so that way it's a little bit more widely usable for other people that may not like PowerShell or don't use it. I want to expand to other remote access tools and certainly try to link some of the IPs and geo data associated with that and the relays. So with that being said, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak, appreciate everybody listening. I'll be here. I'll look at Slack and answer any questions. I recognize my time has already passed. However, if you're interested in those PowerShell functions that I mentioned, you can grab them at that site. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.